Hey guys, it's Kevin again, and as you guys know, I have seen a lot of movies this year. The most I've seen, I think, any year, to be honest with you, and because of that, there are times where some of these films I just simply don't get to review. I've wanted to review them, but due to time constraints and things like that, I just didn't have enough time. So I figured that I would rectify that by giving you guys a much needed video where I do a bunch of catch-up reviews. There's about 18 or 19 films that I have to get to, so let's just get started. Hey guys, it's Kevin again, and this is going to be a very long, delayed catch-up video. Also, guys, I'm going in the order of how I've seen these films. It's just easiest to do, and I'm not going to do what I did in my last catch-up review where I talked about the plot and things like that, just because there's a lot of films to get through here, and it's just going to be easier if I give you my brief thoughts on all of these and the grade and things like that, so let's just get into it. So the first film I'm going to be reviewing is a movie called Hostiles, which this is a movie that came out in January that I don't think a lot of people saw, and I watched it again last night, and this is actually a really damn good film. It's from the same director of things like Out of the Furnace and Black Mass, and I really enjoyed this one, to be honest with you. I think this is a very well done film about post-Civil War and how these two enemies basically come together, because essentially what the movie is you got Christian Bale, who, he's on the soldier side of things. Then you have, Wes Studi, who's dying, and he has to try to, escort Wes Studi, before he dies back to his land. And I really love where this film went with it, because it does not go in the direction you think it's going to. He starts off and he doesn't really want anything to do with this. He just sees it as, oh, it's a mission, it's the objective. And you see as the film goes on, he really starts to care more for all of the Comanche Indians, and he starts to see the good in them, and I really enjoyed where they went with that. I think that was definitely very well done. Rosamund Pike in this film, holy shit, her opening scene in this movie honestly is one of the most riveting things I have seen all year. I mean, if you watch this movie in general, just watch it for that opening scene, because it's crazy where they end up going with it. It comes out of nowhere. It's so insane. The best way to describe it is like Avengers Infinity War, like the beginning of that movie, but if it was much less abrupt and much more bloody, and they were able to, a lot more realistic and things like that. It's very well handled, and I really did love it. Christian Bale, Rosamund Pike, like I said, everyone really is great here. Timothée Chalamet's kind of wasted. He's in the movie. He doesn't really have a lot to do. If you're seeing the movie for him, might be a little disappointed. There are some scenes that do drag here and there, but overall, I really enjoyed this one. I think this is a very important film. I think it's, it's not anything you haven't seen before, but it's just a very well done film about, like I said, sort of like racial tensions going on in this time and things like that, and him growing to love your enemy. That's kind of like the message of the film is, love your enemies as much as you hate them, and I think that was a very well done message. Ben Foster's character, I don't really get the point of. I don't really know why he's here, honestly. Like, he starts off and you think he has a purpose, but as it goes on, he really doesn't have much of one, and I don't really know why he was here. But like I said, really enjoyed this one overall. Really great film. I'd probably give it like a B+. I definitely would recommend it, and if you haven't seen it, it's definitely worth checking out. So the next one I'm going to review, this has not been a very strong year for Netflix at all, but there have definitely been some gems, and The Ritual, thankfully, is one of them. This isn't an amazing movie or anything. A lot of people say, oh, this is like an amazing film, and I thought it was solid. I thought this was definitely a very well done film. We focus on, these four characters, so right off the bat, it's very simplistic in that way. One of them is very much mourning the loss of their friend, who he kind of feels like he very much was responsible for, and I think they did a very good job with that. What I think works even better in this film is the horror stuff. It's not typical, like, jump scares and things like that. It's very gradual. It actually takes a while for the film to get really scary, and once we get to the climax, where they end up going with it, I did not expect them to go there. It's a creature that you really haven't seen before. It really is something quite different, and whenever when people say that, oh, we have seen every single creature in the book, We really haven't, because this film gives us something that I really haven't seen before, and I really did love it. Rafe Spall is really great here. I really loved his performance. Like I said, a lot of people seem to love this film. For me, I thought it was a bit slow at first. It did take a while to get into, but once it got great, it really did get great, and this is definitely one of the better Netflix films for sure. I definitely give this one a B. I think this is a very good film, and like I said, I know I trash on Netflix a lot, but this is actually one of the ones I would recommend you guys check out. Den of Thieves is one of the January films that I actually didn't get a chance to see in theaters. I really wanted to. I try to see as much as I can, but I just didn't have a chance to watch this one. I actually did watch this movie with my good friend, FilmFan0599, and thank God that I did, because honestly, if I would have watched this alone, I probably would turn this off. This is easily one of the most boring things I have seen all year. It's so overlong. I will admit Gerard Butler is actually really good here. Like, he actually is really trying for a film that is so mediocre and so been there, done that. He actually does give a really strong performance. I thought O'Shea Jackson was good here as well. 50 Cent, on the other hand, I thought was pretty bad. I really did not think that he gave a very strong performance in this movie. He has this really weird scene involving his daughter and this guy she's taking to prom. One of the most out-of-place scenes I've seen in a while. I really don't know why that's in the movie. It's one of those things that they easily could have cut out, but they just didn't. Like I said, it's not a terrible movie. I do actually think there is some good stuff about it. Like I said, Gerard Butler and some of the performances are really good. But they keep focusing too much on things I don't care about. I don't care about Gerard Butler and his wife and them going through all these, like, divorce problems. I don't care about that stuff. I don't care about the relationship problems they have in the movie. I don't care about the other characters. And once we get to the end of the film, the direction this takes is genuinely one of the most baffling things I've seen in a while. I really do not understand this twist. I've really tried to think about it, and there really isn't a single way you can actually make this twist work. Honestly, I'm very interested in seeing where they do go in the sequel. Do we need it? Absolutely not, but considering how batshit crazy this twist is, I actually am interested in seeing where they do go with it. I would definitely not recommend this one. It's very forgettable. It's not a bad movie in it by any means, but it's definitely very boring. It's way too long. It's just the definition of a disposable January film. I actually haven't seen Heat, which I know a lot of people said this ripped off, so I can't say that I've seen it before. I do know the movie, of course, but I haven't seen it. But I'm sure it is a hell of a lot better than what this turned out to be. This next one I'm going to review, I was actually really looking forward to this one, The Vanishing of Sidney Hall, and that's mainly because of the cast. I mean, look at the cast here. You got Logan Lerman, Elle Fanning, Michelle Monaghan, Margaret Qualley, Nathan Lane, Kyle Chandler. I mean, how can this not be something amazing? And it kind of sucks. It really does. I think the biggest issue with this movie is the way it's structured, because it tries to tell this very complex story about this very troubled guy named Sidney Hall. He is this author, and we go through 3 decades of his life, but it's not done in a linear fashion. In fact, we keep cutting back to all 3 decades to the point where it gets very jumbled and it's very hard to tell what's actually going on. I will say the thing holding all this together is Logan Lerman. He's great in this movie. I think he did a really great job. Even when the film isn't really working, I think he was very strong here. There are some really good scenes between him and Elle Fanning. They do actually have some very believable chemistry, but there's a lot of characters where I'm just like, what was the point of them? Like, Margaret Qualley shows up in this movie, and her character does have a purpose, but then they do this thing with her in the 3rd act, and it's like, okay, so the first 2 actually made me think this, but then you made me think this, and it did not work at all. Where they end up going with her, it just did not work. I'm glad to see Margaret Qualley doing more stuff, but it just did not work well here. Nathan Lane's really good. Kyle Chandler, not in the movie a lot, but he definitely does a really good job. Michelle Monaghan is terrible. I really did not like her in this movie. She's just your typical abusive mother who for some reason doesn't want Sidney to write stuff. We we never really understand why. And like I said, I think that's the biggest problem. If this movie would have been a bit more of a linear structure, then I think it really could have worked. And again, I'm all for unconventional storytelling. I usually love that stuff, but just here, it did not work. It was way too complicated. There were too many times where I'm like, all right, this character is from here, but where is this character from? I kept forgetting where we really were because the movie doesn't really do that great of a job at making these characters look older. Logan, Lerman, like Sidney Hall does look different throughout the movie, but especially in the second and third sort of timelines, the second and third story that we're following, it's very confusing. It's just hard to tell what's actually going on here. Like I said, not a bad movie, but very disappointing overall. Definitely one of the weakest A24 films I've seen, and definitely not something that I would recommend. Logan Lerman, again, very good actor, but just did not work as a whole. I'd probably give it like it just did not work overall. I'd give it like a C-. Again, similar to Den of Thieves. It's not a terrible movie, but just something I really wanted a lot more from. Once again, we have another Netflix movie I recommend, Benji. Now, here's the thing with Benji. Is this a complex, very sort of resonative, memorable film? No, but if you just want something really cute that you can just watch and enjoy, not really pay attention to the things that don't really make sense, just turn on Benji. It's a fun film. It is. Is this film dumb at points? Yes. Does it have the greatest acting in the world? No. I do think there is some acting here that isn't really all that great. The sister especially I didn't really think was that great here. Gabriel Bateman is really good. The whole thing with them getting kidnapped, it's a little bit rushed. They definitely could have done a bit more when it comes to the characters, but you know what? Compared to most Netflix films, it's very charming. It really is just a very cute film, and I feel like there's a lot worse films that you could pick on than Benji. I'd give it like a B-. I honestly really did enjoy it. Again, nothing I'd really watch again, but I enjoyed it in the moment, and again, it's much better than what we've been getting from the majority of Netflix films this year. Roxanne, this is another one that was on Netflix. I don't think a lot of people saw it, and this one is really damn good. It's about Roxanne Shante. It's kind of like Straight Outta Compton, but I very loosely would compare it to that because this focuses more on her family life and less on her rap career. Nia Long is phenomenal in this movie, probably the best I've ever seen from her. Honestly, I think she's Oscar-worthy here. The main actress takes a little while to get into the role, but I think overall she did a really good job as this character. I'm interested in seeing where she does end up going from here. Mahershala Ali, he's really great. He's kind of underused in this movie. Don't expect him to be in this movie a lot, but what he has, he's really good. I do think the movie does take a little while to get going, and its third act, it very much does drag a little bit, but I really enjoyed it. I thought it was honestly a very different sort of take on a famous rapper that we haven't really seen before. Most times they focus on like the glamour, but this, the fame and the fortune, but this focused much more on her family life and felt a little more personal. It did feel like it was missing something. Like, I feel like it should have focused on both, but it was a cool idea overall. I definitely really enjoyed it. I thought it was solid enough, and I definitely give this one a B. Definitely worth checking out. Not enough people have seen it, and like I said, considering Netflix's track record this year, this is definitely one of the better ones to see. Suicide Squad: Hell to Pay. Now, this isn't one that I was planning on watching, but a bunch of my friends, they wanted to watch this one, and I actually did really enjoy this movie. Now, I'm gonna be honest with you guys, I do enjoy the movie Suicide Squad. Now, I know all of you are like booing, and you're like, what the hell, Kevin? Why should I follow your movie reviews? Do you understand what a bad movie is? Yes, I realize it is a very dumb movie, but you know what? It's one of those films where I can just watch it, be aware of the flaws, and just have a good time. It is, I think, there are some good character moments and things like that. Admittedly, this film is a lot better. Christian Slater is really great as Deadshot. I think he did a really good job here. There's a really nice arc, including him and his daughter, that I really did enjoy. I also thought I also thought the casting all across the board here was pretty great. I thought the chick who played Killer Frost was really good. There's a weird sort of shift with her that I really didn't buy, but it did work overall. I understand what they were trying to do. I thought that, someone like Vanessa Williams was really strong here. I thought Billy Brown was really good. Leah McIntyre. Really, everyone did a very good job in this movie. I will say, though, what a waste of Tara Strachan, especially when you compare it to Suicide Squad. Harley Quinn really doesn't have much to do here except just be like a one-joke machine. So here's the thing. I would say this is the better Suicide Squad film, but if you're looking for more Harley Quinn development, then I would say watch the live-action one, because she really does not have much to do here at all. But in general, I enjoyed it. I thought it was really solid. I definitely give this one a B. Again, nothing amazing, but compared to the other Suicide Squad movie, this is definitely a much better film overall. Even though I gave both movies the same rating, I think this is definitely very solid, and I think for most people, it'll probably scratch that itch that they've been wanting when it comes to a really good Suicide Squad movie, because I think this one mostly does deliver. Now, so far, all the Netflix films I've been reviewing have actually been fairly solid. That doesn't mean that there were some ones that were pretty bad. The Titan is one of them. This movie is terrible. It's actually the worst out of all the films I'm reviewing here. There's nothing as bad as The Titan in this list of films, but yeah, this film, it's just terrible. It's long, it's boring. Sam Worthington is pretty much sleepwalking throughout it. I will say, Taylor Schilling, I actually did think gave a convincing performance here. She does a good job as someone who is trying to keep her relationship afloat with her husband, but at the same time, she knows the change that he's going through, because Worthington's kind of turning into like this albino sort of creature. Then there's this side story going on. They're supposed to be like two different stories, and they don't really do a good job of showing you that. It just becomes very confusing. Where they end up going with it, I thought was really predictable, and it was one of those films where it just never felt like it would end. There's like 5 different endings in this movie, and it just really didn't work overall. It's nothing that is like offensively bad compared to other Netflix films I've seen. It's not as bad, but it still is a pretty awful film that I've honestly kind of forgotten about by now, but it's still terrible. It highlights all of the problems that Netflix movies really do have, especially when it comes to these sci-fi films. It's bland, it's boring. I wasn't even planning on watching it. Fuck you, Jackson Fulcher, for making us watch this. And yeah, The Titan, it sucks. I give this one like a D+. Really wouldn't recommend it at all. It's terrible and definitely not worth your time. Happy Anniversary is the definition of just a very fluffy rom-com. That's really all this is. It's very harmless. It's so short. This movie is like 73 minutes long, and similar to Benji, there's just other films that you really can hate on. I can't really see anyone hating this movie. Like, obviously I can, but to me, I thought the chemistry between the two leads was actually very strong. I thought they worked well together. There were some good laughs here and there. The rest of the cast I really didn't think was that strong at all. The one dude from iZombie, he's kind of wasted in this movie. He doesn't really have much of anything to do. But like I said, you've seen this 1,000 times before. The whole movie is literally just these two in a relationship and trying to figure out whether or not it's actually going to work between them. And that's it. That's what this entire film is. It kind of ends up being nothing, but again, it's harmless. It's nothing really that bad. I'd give it like a C. It wasn't anything terrible, but it's literally one of the most disposable, fluffy romantic comedies I've seen in a while that you probably don't need to see. Outside In, on the other hand, this is one I would absolutely recommend you see. This is a film that I feel like nobody is talking about. This was just another film that I rented because I saw it was on VOD. I like Edie Falco, I like Jay Duplass, and this is actually a really damn good movie. What I really love about this film is the way it tells the story, because sure, we've seen movies about an ex-convict and him getting released from jail and him having to adjust to normal life again, but not really done in this way. You see, this character, he's been in jail for about 20 or so years, since he was like a young teenager, so he's not really developed in the way that you or I can. It's kind of like Brigsby Bear in that sense, but I don't think it's nearly as complex and deep as Brigsby Bear. but it definitely is very well handled. I will admit, though, it's a little too focused on the romance between him and Edie Falco. It's well done. I really do love that story. I think Edie Falco's character is very well handled. She's someone who you can tell she does care for Chris, J. Duplass's character here, but in general, you know, she does have a family of her own, and she's not sure if she really wants to take that step. I love Caitlin Dever here as well. She did a really great job. I thought overall this was just a very solid movie. I really did like where they ended up going with it. The relation between him and his brother, I thought, was very underutilized. I don't really think we got enough of a look into that, but what we have here is actually very solid. I think it was definitely a very interesting story overall. It's a bit different from most, like I said, of these ex-convict films we do get, and I definitely did enjoy this one. J. Duplass, I think, is about as strong as his brother is. I think they're both honestly really good, really competent actors, and I really do want to see him do more here. So, yeah, I definitely recommend it. Like I said, I give it like a B. I think it's a really good movie, and definitely something that I would recommend you guys check out. So, going back to Netflix, every single year we seem to have that big Adam Sandler film, and this year it is the week of, and look, I'll say this. This is definitely not the Meyerowitz Stories, but it's not the Do-Over either. The week of is just in the middle. It's about as fluffy as an Adam Sandler film I think can get. Really nothing happens in this film, honestly. The whole movie is just, we're leading up to his daughter getting married. There is actually some good stuff here. I thought Chris Rock actually did do a good job. Adam Sandler seemed kind of bored in this movie. He didn't really seem like he wanted to be here that much. Until the ending, I will say the ending, he actually did get really good. There's a great scene between him and his daughter that I really love. But the problem with this movie is that it doesn't seem to know what it wants to be. Every time it goes into like this really genuine stuff, it's undercut by just really juvenile comedy, and some of it really doesn't work, but it's not as over the top and it's not as raunchy as you may expect it to be. This one actually is PG-13. There's a really good character named Uncle Seymour that I actually really did enjoy. I thought he was actually the best part of this movie. Steve Buscemi also is really good here, but again, it's very forgettable. It's definitely the most fluffy out of these Adam Sandler Netflix films we've been getting, but he definitely is improving. I thought Sandy Wexler was a much better film altogether, but I'll definitely take this over something like The Do-Over, that is for sure. I'd probably give it like a C. It's nothing amazing. It's definitely probably something you could skip. It's not as bad as people have been making it out to be. At least for me, it wasn't, and definitely have seen way worse things from him before. Now we get to what might be my most disappointing film in this entire list, and that's Most Likely to Murder, and that's mainly because I went into this movie basically knowing nothing. All I knew is that Rachel Bloom was in it, and I was very happy to see her doing some besides Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, but this movie's terrible. I honestly hated this film. The best way to describe it is basically it's kind of the main character here. He's kind of like Johnny from Cobra Kai if all the likability was stripped away from him, because unlike him in Cobra Kai, this isn't someone that has any really redeeming qualities about him. He hasn't learned really anything since he, you know, basically got out of high school. He was like the big jock and everyone loved him, and now everyone just doesn't want anything to do with him. He's getting shit on constantly, but he never seems to pick up on that. He never seems to pick up on the fact that these people have grown up, and he's just it's just very infuriating. He's not a very likable character in that sense. Rachel Bloom, honestly, is kind of wasted here, and the plot of this movie is just really dumb. He's trying to prove that, like, Rachel Bloom's boyfriend is, you know, basically this murderer, and this was like the guy that he bullied in high school and things like that. And I will say, at first, I did think that the actor who played Lowell was really good here, and then a twist happens in the movie, and I'm just like, okay, why were you going for this specific, you know, why were you acting in this way when this happened? It just didn't really make sense at all. It's a really bad movie. The comedy really falls flat here. I heard Adam Paley is a very good actor, and I don't really think he's the problem with this movie. It's just kind of everything else. Again, Rachel Bloom, I will admit she did make me laugh when she was in the film, but she is a very reactionary type role. She really doesn't have anything to do in this movie, and other than that, I really did not like this one at all. This is just the definition of just a really dumb comedy. It's one of the dumbest I've seen in a while, and definitely something I wouldn't recommend. Is even if you're a fan of Rachel Bloom, I would not recommend checking this out. She's very much wasted here. Just go watch Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, and I think you'll get exactly what you want from her here. I give this one like a D+. It's one of the worst comedies I've seen all year, and definitely would not recommend it. This one, I guarantee none of you have seen. I know there's been films on this list that I've talked about that you guys probably haven't seen. This one I know for a fact no one has seen, and that's Duck Butter. This movie, again, I just saw it, I rented it, and it's good. I think this is a really interesting film because it's these two girls and basically they're kind of tired of relationships that don't really go anywhere and are just there for like casual hookups and things like that. And they really want this genuine connection with each other. They want to, spend 24 hours together. It's a very audacious film in that sense because a lot of this film is just these two together. And I will admit, Alia Sawkat and the other chick in the film who I can't name right now, they both do a really great job here. I think they both have really good performances. Unfortunately, the one who is French in this movie, she just does not really have a lot to do as a character. We don't really understand much about her family life. We get the sense that her and her mother don't have a good relationship, but they don't really do much with that. It's much more focused on Alia Sawkat and sort of the things that she's dealing with because she didn't really have that great of a life, and I actually did like seeing that. As the film goes on, though, it really does start to get tiring, and that is intentional but also intentional in the sense that this movie's only an hour and 30 minutes long, and towards the end of it, it started to feel like 24 hours. It really did. I really did not like the way this film did wrap up. The ending I thought was good, but I thought as the movie went on, it just got stranger and stranger, and not in a way where it actually did work. It just felt like they were kind of running out of things to do here. They had this really interesting concept, but they just didn't seem like they really knew what to do with it. I don't know. I thought it was okay. I thought it was a good movie overall. I thought that the acting was pretty good here. It's nothing I think that is like a must-see, but it's a very interesting type of film. I really do admire it more. I admire the aesthetic and sort of like what they're trying to go for than the actual film in hand. I probably give it like a B-. It's nothing amazing. It is a good film overall. Like I said, it does start to get tiring in that third act, but those first two acts are very solid. I really did like the setup. If you like the Duplass brothers, you might not want to watch this movie because this film might change your opinion of them. Also, one of the weirdest cameos I have seen from Kumail Nanjiani in a while. He's in like the first scene of this movie. This isn't really a spoiler because he's listed as one of the main characters. He's literally in one scene. I don't know why he's in this movie. Completely wasted. Very strange overall. But it's a cool idea. Just in general, didn't really do much for me. But I definitely would recommend checking it out, if only because of how different and weird it really is. Breaking In is extremely boring. This film I really was not a fan of. Going into it, I thought it was going to be disposable, and that's exactly what it is. I will say, Gabrielle, however you pronounce her name, she gave a really good performance here. I actually really did buy her sort of, her urgency to find her kids and things like that. Unfortunately, I didn't really buy anything else because her kids never really seemed like they were in that much danger. They're kind of just locked up in one room and they're forced to listen to these three guys, and it seems like, they're never really in any real danger. Billy Burke, I did actually think was pretty convincing here. I actually did like his performance in the film. He gets really cartoony at points, but I thought he did a good job. The other two, forget about it. They were terrible. Also, her son in the movie was so annoying. I really was not a fan, and thankfully he wasn't in the movie a lot, but he was definitely in it enough for me to really be annoyed by him. The way the movie ended was pretty much as expected. There's really nothing that's shocking about this movie. There's nothing really that, that you haven't really seen before. It doesn't doesn't really revitalize the genre or anything like that. It's very boring. It didn't really do much of anything for me. I nearly fell asleep like 2 times during this, and that's really all I have to say. It's really not that great. Like, I'd probably give this like a C- or anything like that. It's really not worth your time, honestly. You've seen this movie 1,000 times before. It's nothing different, and yeah. Now, there's quite a few films that I have reviewed for you guys in this video, but these next two I think are of the highest recommendation. First off, Disobedience. I was really looking forward to this one. I thought this one had a lot of potential. A lot of people were saying that this is a discount version of Carol, and I would disagree. I don't think this is really like Carol at all. Carol was about two women kind of discovering who they were through their relationship, while Disobedience is much more about freedom of choice. And you know, for those of you who might be turned off by its religious undertones, they're using that as a way to, you know, really get across the point of the movie, which, like I said, is about freedom of choice and, you know, freedom of sexuality and things like that. And I think that stuff is very well done here. Rachel McAdams is phenomenal in this movie. What her character's been through is really fucked up, but that stuff does happen. You can see why that is not, you know, why that is frowned upon, you know, the Orthodox community. Rachel Weisz is really good here. The two really do have very convincing chemistry, but perhaps I think the most shocking part of this film was where they actually end up going with Alessandro. I can't think of his last name. His character, very shocking. I thought he was going to be like the villain in the movie. He's really not. Once you get down to it, you kind of see how he's just as conflicted as these two are. I will admit it did take a while for the film to really get going. Like, I wasn't into the first 20 or so minutes I wasn't fully engaged in, but once we got like the whole scope of what was actually going on and, you know, how they had to hide this relationship and things like that, I thought it got really great. Not enough people are talking about this one. This is a really damn good film, though. I definitely give this one like a B+. It probably is maybe the best of the ones I'm reviewing, but I'd say go see this as soon as possible. It's a really great movie, and again, I don't think it's getting enough attention. And then the other one I highly recommend you guys see is Revenge. This one is fantastic. Everyone's talking about it. It kind of blew up out of nowhere, but I've always really liked Matilda Lutz. I don't know why people are saying, oh, she shouldn't have been in Rings. I actually enjoyed Rings. I thought she was actually one of the best things about that movie, and she really is quite great here. The three actors, they're fine. They do what they need to do, but I thought she did a really great job in this movie. This is a very socially relevant film, but I wouldn't say that this is a film full of, like, SJW agendas. That's what a lot of people are saying. I would very much disagree with that. What this is basically doing is it is your classic rape revenge film, but with a much bigger twist. It's much more artsy. It has a lot of metaphors and things like that, a lot of real-life parallels that I overall really did enjoy. The three men in this movie are completely irredeemable. They are incredibly unlikable, but they do a really great job of making you hate them. But at the same time, you can kind of see where one of them is coming from. The other two you really can't at all, but one of them you really can see where he's coming from. And I won't lie, there were some really riveting scenes in this film, but because of the fact that you know how these films are going to play out, the sort of tension that the film was going for, it did kind of deflate. Like, I wasn't really ever in shock when anything happened. There are some really graphic scenes in this movie. Like, this is hands down one of the most violent films I think I've ever seen, particularly one scene involving glass. Just, I have not winced in pain. I have not winced while watching a movie this big in a while. I mean, it was really graphic, and not in a way that felt gratuitous. Like, you could tell why they needed to show this. You could tell that this was important, but it is one of the most graphic things I've seen in a while, and definitely, it's not for the faint of heart, that's for sure. If you don't like violent movies, just stay the hell away from this one, because you're definitely not going to enjoy it. But if you can handle it, it's definitely very well recommended. I really enjoyed it overall. It's very entertaining. Like I said, not necessarily shocking because you know where it's going to go, but it's a very well done film. It's much better than most rape revenge films of its kind, and I think it definitely is really well done for sure, and I definitely recommend it. I give it like a B+. Really enjoyed it, and again, just like Disobedience, I think this one is of the highest recommendation. Alright, so you know how I said before that The Titan is the worst film on this list? Yeah, then I forgot about Anon, which, holy shit, I mean, this movie is so bad that it took my friends a week to finish. I'm not kidding. We watched the first, like, 25 minutes of this movie, and we didn't continue it for, like, 2 weeks. That's how long it took. That's how unengaging this movie really is. I mean, the plot of this isn't even really, doesn't really make sense. Like, it's like this futuristic world where there's no privacy or anything like that, so everything's like recorded, and basically there are all these files from like this character that died that Clive Owen is trying to find, and you know, all these files, like, they end up, like, right when things get interesting, you see, oh, file not available, or end of file, or, you know, it starts, like, glitching or something like that, and it's really annoying. Like, I understand that some of this stuff isn't accessible to them in the future, but the world building is incredibly weak. You don't really understand how this came to be. The characters are so unengaging. All Clive Owen's character is that he has this, like, affair going on with, like, this lady, and then there's, like, Amanda Seyfried as well, who I really didn't care about. And the film, in the end, it just ends up being a big bowl of nothing. It really does. There are so many scenes that are repeated, and including these, like, 2 lesbians that I didn't give a shit about. Just this whole film is so unengaging. It's one of the most boring things I've seen all year. It's also one of the most derivative things I've seen all year. It's trying so hard to be like the next Blade Runner or something like that, and it fails miserably in doing so. I would not recommend this at all. It's awful. It put like I said, I watched this on Rabbit with some friends, and it put 2 people to sleep. That's how boring this is. The only other film to do that was Terminal. This movie was just so boring. I really was not a fan of it. Clive Owen, I didn't think was that great here. His accent goes in and out throughout the film. Amanda Seyfried, I guess, was okay, but other than that, there's not really much to like about this one. I'd give this like a D. I really did not like this at all. I thought this was pretty terrible, and it's definitely one of the worst Netflix films of the year for sure. And now we get to, finally, the last film I'm going to be reviewing. I know this was a lot, but it is, in fact, Beast. Another film I'm sure many of you haven't heard of. The only reason I saw this is because there is a film festival going on near me, and I was going to try to see this one there, and I didn't, so I finally did see it, and it's good. I do think this is an interesting film overall. Jessie Buckley is very strong here. Her character is very questionable. There are points where you think this character is imagining things, and then we kind of realize that she's not, and then we start to realize throughout the film that she's not exactly who she seems to be. The first, like, 20 to 30 minutes, I really wasn't into at all. Once a certain twist comes in involving Johnny Flynn's character, then I thought it actually got really riveting. I thought they did a really good job with the two. They actually did have some very believable chemistry. It goes pretty off the rails in the third act, and it kind of leaves you just kind of at a loss for words, not in the sense where it's like, wow, that was incredible. A loss for words in the sense, like, what the fuck did I just watch? Like, I really don't know what they were trying to do with this third act. It's alright overall. Like I said, Jessie Buckley is phenomenal here. I think she did a really great job, but other than that, there's not really much else to this film that I'd really say, oh, you gotta go out and see it right now. I'd give this like a B-. I think it's a interesting film, definitely. I think there is some really good, there's a lot of good stuff about it. It's just nothing that really did anything for it. It didn't really do much for me. It didn't really give me what I wanted it to be, and I went into it not really knowing much of anything, so it's not like I had any expectations going into this film, but just what it could have been, it just wasn't, and like I said, it just didn't really work for me in the end. And with that, guys, that's it. I know that was a lot of stuff to get through, but those are all the catch-up reviews I will be doing. This will probably not be the last one I do this year because there are probably going to be other films that I just don't have a lot to say about and I want to do in a catch-up review. But either way, guys, that's it for this video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Let me know what you guys thought of any of these movies if you have seen them. A lot of them I'm sure you haven't. But that's in my review. Hope you guys enjoy. I'll see you guys in my next video, and I will see you guys for that. Okay, bye.